Kyle here from All Media Reviews. Yesterday, February 29th, was the release of Dirk Parabin's Firebird. And I'm not going to do necessarily a full-on review just because it's so early and I hate doing that. But I will just give somewhat of a review, and this is kind of more like just a video blog, another video blog, because all this other stuff has come up. I also, unfortunately, have had some unfortunate news in my family. So I learned of an aunt of mine who was in her 90s, who was put in hospice a few months ago, passed away. So second family member I've had. So what happens, time is catching up with some of us, but it's just not easy. Just kind of like trying to do stuff as trivial as music. As much as it means a lot to me, music does, and entertainment and television and sports and movies. Then when you have family members not around, it definitely kind of makes you think about things in life in general and what your priorities are. But just as a distraction, the music stuff does help. So I'm going to talk about that in this video. So I'll review briefly Firebird, and then the new Everything album I've only listened to once, Mountainhead. And then talk a little bit about Another Sky, their new album that came out today, March 1st, Beach Day. And then some news about Ben Sinister. This is really kind of piggybacking or following up from the blog I put up a couple days ago. But first of all, I can just say about Firebird, the thing about it is, they put out, 3 or 4 singles at least last summer for it, but they knew it was going to come out at some point. They thought it was going to come out in the fall, and then they decided no, it's coming out in 2024 early. Then they got the release date of Leap Day, and it was the thought, they just put out, obviously, just literally less than a year and a half ago even, Queen of the Night, which was a little bit of a departure from their style in some ways, of the stuff from the Raven Locks, and then definitely different from Dead Horse, the Dead Horse EPs, Dead Horse Alaska EP, and then the Dead Horse compilation EP record. And what Firebird, I guess, is, and I have not watched, and if I have time to do that this weekend, again, everything with family stuff, and but if I have time, I would like to watch, there's an interview that was done by a guy, Derek Fiedler, I think his name. My apologies if that's not correct. Did an interview with Neil DeGrade and Kate DeGrade, and one of the members who plays with them. So probably talking about the concept. And the concepts of Dirk Parabin's albums have always been secondary to me, even though their music is very conceptual and very story-based, even though it doesn't seem to really fall into that trap of being melodramatic and like rock opera per se, where you're reading dialogue. There's not much dialogue in any of their concept albums. So that happy marriage that the Deer Hunter's successful with, and some other bands have been successful with. So it's really, to me, Firebird is, I guess, like a follow-up or a sequel, or at least, to Dead Horse. And Dead Horse was different than the Raven Locks in that it was kind of more futuristic, where the Raven Locks kind of hearkened and channeled more of a time from decades or a century or two going back, how many decades. And of course Queen of the Night did too, to an extent. They have the black and white film. Well, that wasn't necessarily intentional originally, I guess. I don't remember. But so we heard those 4 or 5 songs. The one thing I'll say about them is there was an 80s element to it, a very synthy element to those songs. There were more guitar solos than maybe that had been on Queen of the Night, and from my memory, not too much. They've had some guitar solos from Dirk Parabin's. I'm thinking really the earlier stuff and a little bit of the Raven Lock stuff, the Cage and Leviathan. But the other thing about it is they put out these lyric videos, or they were videos with AI, artificial intelligence generated, and I don't know how much of it is. I don't know if all of the artwork and the images. My cat's trying to play around here. Come here, Kaji. I don't know how much. I don't think 100%, but definitely a percentage of the videos they made and the artwork they made for Firebird were definitely somewhat, if not fully, driven by AI. And I'm still kind of, on the fence about my feelings of AI. Granted, it's music, and if the music is still done by them, if they're making videos that are AI, even if I don't care for seeing AI videos, it doesn't bother me because I like the music first and foremost. So, but that part of it's kind of in my mind about Firebird. That all being said, and seems like it's a full review, this record is very good. It reminds me a little bit of the last Major Parkinson album, Valessa, Chapter 1, The Velvet Prison, in that they combined sort of 80s synth pop, a lot of synths, new wave, dark wave, with their style of rock really well, like heavy rock at points, theatrical, and Kate's voice. Kate's voice is definitely... It definitely tracked. There's points of it you're hearing it 2, 3, 4 maybe tracks over each other, kind of like what Queen would do and Jellyfish and a lot of bands have done. But it's still effective. I mean, you can tell it's her. There's a few points I'm wondering if it's actually Neil singing and not her, but for the most part, this album has still a lot of earworms, and my biggest point of contention at this point, having heard it about 3.5 times, is a few of the tracks do have like that 80s electronic drums, which it's definitely a very sensitive topic to me at points with those kind of drums. There's only a couple tracks. I want to say it's on Fever Dream maybe, and You'll Never Hear It Coming, and then there's one other track. To the Heights. Now, To the Heights, I don't know, it was a single early last year, but it's super catchy. That track, I mean, from Political all the way to The Heights, or actually Political all the way to All at Once, every track I heard it on Spotify, and they all have moments to enjoy. You'll Never Hear It Coming, the ending I love. It's dreamy, it's kind of fancy, and like this experience with losing my aunt today kind of brought me back, and it kind of made me think of the whole thing with Dead Horse and the loss of my dog. It's like, what's going on with Dripper Robbins and losses of family members, and when Latte passed away, my other cat, that was when Family Crest album came out. I don't know, it's pure coincidence. Albums come on every week, but that run of tracks is great. Empty is a ballad, and they reprise the melody in Beauty Will Save the World, I believe that line. The last track, the one they released a single for Firebird, is really good too. It's very thematic. I will say, though, I think the first half's more consistent. The second half is more kind of character-driven at points. There's one track that I think it's So Long to Yesterday, where you have Neil talking to some crowd, or some character. He mentions back in 2073, I think, because it's set in the... So that, in that sense, it really is a continuation, because Dead Horse was set in the future, too, and about technology. But, yeah, I mean, I like it a lot. It definitely is a good blending of their kind of cinematic chamber. There's a trombone and some other chamber instrumentation in here with the bed of synths and some synthesizers. And it's only like maybe half of the album that uses a lot of synths. Some of the tracks aren't, so it's sort of the actual the thing that the album comes across with as being very 80s synth driven or inspired and influenced is probably not fully like 100% giving the impression of this record. It still has other elements, but I think it's kind of like almost par for the course for them in a way, because they've had Queen of the Night, Dead Horse, and all the Raven Locks record. I mean, it's a hard, it's such high quality, and there's a lot of production. In some ways, it's almost overproduced, but they're very meticulous. I don't know if it's Neil, Cade, and whoever else, in their production, their mixing, their engineering of a lot of this. There's tons of layers, so... But I think it's kind of what I've come to expect from Dripper Robbins, other than I would love to see them do, like, this record that I'm absolutely engrossed by. Now, in fairness, I've only heard it a few times, so this record may still grow even more on me, but... To say I love it is pretty accurate. I mean, I like it a lot, if not love it. I gave it 4 stars, so... So moving on, I'll just want to talk a little bit about Everything's album, which this is a very early review. I was looking at Everything's history. Mountainhead, it's called, came out today. And they have videos I haven't even watched. I watched the first video. They released, like Britpop Robbins, 2 or 3 singles over the last couple months. I think I had one late last year. The End of the Contender, that's one of my favorites. It's 14 tracks and it's like 55 minutes. It's like the same, almost the same length, same number of tracks as the last record, Raw Data Feel, which I know people loved Raw Data Feel, and when Raw Data Feel, when I first heard it, I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed like the first half, even though it seemed like they were doing more with kind of like 80s inspired. That's kind of I don't know if it's a trend or just habit of bands trying to capture some of the 80s synth pop style in the 2020s or the 2010s and 2020s. But I ultimately felt Raw Data Feel was kind of uneven. I mean, it was good, but I saw them last fall and I listened to it. I bought it on vinyl. I have it right over here. And I think I liked it a little more seeing some of the stuff. They did like 9 or 10 of the tracks. I think this album might be a little better. I think this could be their best record, at least since A Fever Dream to me. Again, it's premature because I've just barely heard it. It's just an early first impressions, but I was kind of going back and they were doing some different things on this record. I heard it, Don't Ask Me to Bag, Enter the Mirror, Your Money, My Summer, Dagger's Edge, and City Song. There's a couple songs that didn't even sound like them, and some songs that had guitar parts that sounded like another band, but it's not like them or Foles. There were a couple of mathy pieces. I'm optimistic about this record. I was initially, but I mean, I've kind of, like their Robbins, I've kind of gotten sort of used to, and they've so prolific because this is like their 7th record since whenever. I mean, the debut album came out in 2010, Man Alive. But you think about that, 7 records in 4, it's like every 2 years. Compared to like Pepe Deluxe or Dredge or someone like that. But I don't know. I mean, I've ever since Get to Heaven came out, I thought they're gonna make. Is this their best thing, or is this kind of what they're gonna do? They've stepped up their game a lot. And A Fever Dream was close. I don't think it was as good as Get to Heaven, but I felt Reanimator wasn't as good. The last track on here sounded a little too much like Radiohead. There's one track on Reanimator I always skip because I do not like when when Jonathan Higgs sounds like Tom York and the band sounds like Radiohead. It's the last track, The Witness, I believe. But I will say that given that they had this history of like every album is 11 to 14 tracks, and it's always like, it's that many songs. It's like 14 tracks, so it's a bit long. I felt like with this record, even though I made that post on the Rate Your Music comment box, it actually, I think, might hold up and do better from beginning to end. Or maybe the second half is better than the first half. So I guess I have a little more optimism. Again, this was 2 years ago. Whenever Raw Data Field came out, I think it was the summer of 22. It was like June or July, maybe August. It was June or July. I was in my car listening to that. I'm like, yeah, this song's good. This song's good. And then I got about the 7th or 8th track. I'm like, now it's kind of starting to wane. I felt like the opposite today, and I was really like optimistic about Raw Data Field when it came out. I think this is very likely a better record. I'm gonna like this record more than Raw Data Field, because Raw Data Field finished in the 20s, I think, that year for me, or maybe even 30. Early on, I liked it, and then I kind of wasn't as into it. I'm more optimistic about it. So moving on to the third record to talk about today, which I haven't even listened to the whole thing. I've listened to about half of it, just for the sake of time, or like 2/3 of it. This band, Another Sky, they're from the UK, just like Everything. And, you know, a guy on Reddit recommended them with Bent Knee when I was talking about bands I would recommend. He said, I really like Another Sky. And they're kind of, they sort of Pitchfork or Tiny Desk concert they did. The indie scene, the Pitchfork scene, the hipster scene, at least someone knows about them. Not that many people on Rate Music do, though, oddly enough. But, like, NPR might do something on them. Their singer has been talked about as being, like, sounding like a guy. I think, the singer's kind of non-binary, but the singer's female. But beyond that, the singer on this album, my impression is they are sounding a lot like Jeff Buckley in kind of a good way. The first couple tracks were kind of light, and they released a few singles, The Pain and Swirling Smoke. But then there's some heavier parts on here, and I'm getting a Jeff Buckley vibe. I just mentioned that. I mean, of course, there's been a lot of artists that sound like Jeff Buckley. And I initially thought I would get in Another Sky more listening to their previous, like the EP they put out a couple years ago, and I was sort of underwhelmed. There were a few tracks I liked. I can't even name them, but I'd have to look on my Spotify account. I'm kind of maybe more at the point of like the fact that I didn't expect to like this. I'm liking this more. Now again, I'm liking what I've heard, only about 2/3 of it. So this is really like not even a review. It's just an early brief, like abridged impression. But songs like what was it? Death of the Author, The Pain, A Feeling. It's weird that the singer's got at points a light voice. Again, like the sort of ballady kind of Jeff Buckley voice. But there's some heavier riffs. It's not metal at all. But so yeah, I think Beach Day from Another Sky is a little bit of a sleeper. And if it doesn't turn out that I'm that into it, I don't know, it's like spotty. It ends up being an album I like about half of or something. I'm not going to be disappointed at this point because of my sort of lowered bar with them, given I'm new to them and everything. But if I end up liking it, it could end up being a surprise hit for me. That band Owls a few years ago kind of reminded me of. Although ultimately Owls, that album ended up in 2019. The Deer Hunter fans were going apeshit about them. That band, that album from Owls ended up being in my 20s. But at first, there were like 3 or 4 tracks that were great. So I'm wondering, and this, like the Everything Everything album, is 13 songs. 13 songs, but this one's only 44 minutes. Everything's Mountainhead's like 50 some odd minutes, 54 minutes. But so the fourth, well, there's actually a fifth too. But the fourth music news, it's not, it'd be more for the calendar. But Ben Sinister put out, I mentioned the 2 singles today. Let me go to the news here. One of them's called Big Star, and where's the other one on here? Big Star, and what's the other one called? Go listen to Big Star. I guess I have to go on and look it up here. And they put a video for Big Star out, but then with the press release, and I asked him on it's gotta get ready now. I asked him on Twitter, it's like, this is great. Thanks I'm really excited to hear these 2 new songs. Is there any more information about a full length? It came out. I mean, I know they've been itching to announce it, but their new album is going to be called Whole Lot to Like. I think it's something like that. Let me go back. I don't memorize album titles so quickly. When I first see them, it's one of those sort of general words. Yeah, no, not Whole Lot Like. Whole Lot of Like. Mostly Great Things. And it's coming out on April 11th. So I have a lot of curiosity and questions, of course. These 2 songs that came out today on March 1st, Big Star and Gotta Get Ready Now, are the 7th and 8th tracks they've released new since last summer. So I don't know if the new album's going to have all those songs, or is it going to have some of them? If it's all those songs and more, I'm not going to be unhappy about it, because I haven't burned out on those songs intentionally. I've gotten the habit of just sampling songs. I did listen to a few of them a number of times when I saw the videos last year. They had Renegade. I'm just going it over on Spotify. Price You Pay, What It Takes, Renegade. Those were the primary A singles. And they all had B-sides too. Price You Pay is super catchy and energetic. But they're all great. If all those songs are on there, that's fine. If only Big Star and Gotta whatever it's called, Gotta Get Ready Now are the only 2, that's fine too. We get a whole batch of new Ben Sinister songs. I'm not sure. My guess is because a lot of times bands, and it's been 6 years, it's been 4 years since their last EP, that was whatever it was, 6 songs. They probably have 20, 25 songs. I know Dan Moxon did another solo record. They probably have 20 or 25 songs at least that they've written and recorded that were ready to release on this record. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe only half of those songs, maybe just the A-sides, are the ones that end up on the record. That's 4, and then we get another 5 to 10, 15 songs. I don't know. It would be cool if they would do something progressive in the sense they did a concept album, and kind of like what they did with Stories of Brothers, Tales of Love. I don't expect that. As a band, they're not leaning so much on prog. but and trying to do these big, ambitious, long, extended pieces. They're really just writing songs, so I don't know. We'll find out. But April 11th, I know the track list will come out and everything, and I'm really excited. Finally, that's definitely one of my, if not my biggest, anticipated release now. So the fifth item is The Warning. Are putting out a new single. So next week you have Pepe Deluxe's single I mentioned in the last video blog. But The Warning have a second and third single, in fact, on whatever their upcoming record's going to be. It's likely to come out sometime, probably this summer, sometime later in the year. Hell You Call Dream, and then an additional one, Qué Más Quieres, Quieres. I don't know if that's... but, of course, Hell You Call Dream and the previous single, Sick, which came out... like 3 or 4 weeks ago, they played live. I want to say January, like in some touring segment. And I haven't followed their set list as closely, but yeah, I mean, again, my coworkers like engrossed in it's like an everyday thing with The Warning. But I'm excited to hear this. I like Hell You Call Dream live, the live version of that. Between that and Sick, I like that one more actually. So we're gonna get these songs next week from The Warning, and then maybe it'll coincide with an announcement about the record. I know they're announcing some tour dates. They're going to be opening for Imagine Dragons and playing a festival, and they're playing at Aftershock in October. But, I mean, they're not pure prog, but they're hard rock, and they have some really interesting elements of their sound, if you've never heard The Warning. 3 sisters from Monterrey, Mexico. But anyway... You know, I could do a brief review, I suppose, of the Monk movie. There's these other movies that I want to watch. I'm going to check out, actually, the Fantasy Island movie that came out a few years ago. I never saw that. Didn't realize that. Ryan Hansen and Johnny from Silicon Valley were in it, so connecting to Martin Starr. Along with Pena. Michael Pena plays like the Mr. Rourke character, but... I did see the Monk movie, Monk's Last Case, and I guess, I don't need to do a full review. I'll just talk about it a little bit here. It was good. It was kind of fan servicey. It was good to like sort of see and remember the characters. It's been 15 years since, the Psych cast, of course, that Psych ended after Monk, and Psych has done 3 movies since. But, I mean, the case was good. It was not super, like, mystery based. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. Monk's, late wife's daughter from a previous relationship, I guess. Molly? Yeah, Molly, I believe it is in there. She's engaged to get married to this guy who likes to skydive. And that's kind of weird. He's also involved in this, like, podcast and all this stuff when investigating, like, trying to do stories on this tycoon guy. That turns out Stottlemyre works for. We found out later, which is kind of weird. I mean, I haven't watched Monk. I've watched some of the reruns, but I haven't watched like the last episode since it probably was out back in 2008 or 2009. To remember how everyone ended, I think that Randy ended up going out east. I can't remember that. So Rona's only shown in a flashback. I didn't remember that Monk's, like Tony Shalhoub's real wife, Brooke Adams, was in the movie The Dead Zone with Christopher Walken. I totally love that movie. In fact, I do a movies list that will be definitely on there. But she had a reoccurring character in Monk, which that doesn't surprise me. I guess she'd been in Broadway with him in the 90s. And she plays like an editor of a publisher of a book company. He wrote a book that they didn't want to publish. It's kind of spoiling a little bit, but so that's his wife. She's in there, Brooke Adams. And you do get a lot of Melora Hardin, who played Trudy, his wife, who's basically basis of the whole show and everything, the character about him being thrown out by trying to solve his wife's murder. But she's in a lot of like sort of dream, sort of hallucinating sequences, and that's kind of the biggest new thing. One of the biggest new things they did with this movie, where Monk, if he's hallucinating or he's talking to these spirits of people that died and talking to his wife. His wife Trudy. I want to say they did show that a couple times, either that or they did flashbacks. They did flashbacks for sure with Melora, because obviously she was in it. But you get a lot of her in this. But yeah, I mean, the plot was somewhat plausible. It was kind of, it was really more about the characters, about seeing Adrian Monk. You see Natalie again. You don't get to see Sharona other than in the very beginning, which I don't know if it was from a previous like an episode or it was just that one scene. I think it was from a previous like an episode on the show. So you didn't get Sharona, unfortunately. You didn't get Natalie's daughter, but you got Randy. And you got him doing his thing, of course. They did bring up and emphasize to a small degree life during COVID and Monk's whole like anal retentive germophobic element. I think they probably didn't want to overdo it, which I don't know. I think in some part of me would have wanted them to go for more humor, but I don't think they wanted to overdo it. And it's like now it's coming out. Actually, I think Tony Shalhoub and his wife Brooke Adams were two of the earliest celebrities that got COVID, which is ironic. But obviously they got better. So yeah, Mr. Monk's last case was okay. I mean, I'm glad I saw it. I guess I don't feel sad that I didn't see it right when it came out to celebrate and like the Psych movie. If it comes out, I want to see right when it come out because I'm a bigger fan of Psych. But I've always liked Monk. Kind of got into Monk because of being a Psych fan. I was around the time and caught the reruns. So, but I think that's about it. I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff that came out today that I haven't listened. Paula Cole's Low, Big Train album. Jacob Collier, Jimmy Keegan put out an album. I think that's about it. I mean, I can't remember if there were any more announcements, but it's kind of a big day for this stuff. It's just, and of course, I have something on distracting me or lack thereof just with this family stuff. So, but yeah, I'm gonna get back to hopefully 1983 next week and more of the Kevin Gilbert Thud stuff. And I don't know if I'll review some of these albums more in depth, or what I will look to do is do like a first quarter report, hopefully, because you're looking at the albums of the year race per se, and now stuff's starting to show up between Chromeo. Really liked a lot of the new Chromeo album, Vinart, and some of these EPs from Toehider and Persephone, and of course Pneumatic Transit. So it's a pretty good year, even though I'm focusing on older music and a lot of stuff. But it's been a pretty good year. I don't know if we'll end up trying to do like a group video for the quarter, with that group that I did the albums of the year list. I don't know. Maybe not. It might be more like we're on mid-season around like May or June or July. So anyway, thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Leave a comment. Ring the notification bell. And we'll see you next time. And happy Dirt Per Robbins Firebird Day. I'd love to see your comments about Firebird or everything or any of these records I talked about.